Okay, so the core idea, this is like the main thing that we want you guys to take from this seminar, is to start to understand baseball, not just as a skill, but as a special strength. Like I said before, when you have a skill lens on something, you're observing it in a way where you're trying to make practice different, right? Does that make sense? So you can see that you can look at baseball as a skill, but you can also look at it as a special strength. And if you want to coach baseball, you have to understand it as a skill, but if you want to program treatment and training, you have to understand it as a special strength, okay? And so for us, as essentially what we call ourselves like programming strategists, like how are we going to program our treatment and training in parallel or in conjugation with practice, is we have to have both of those lenses. So our main aim is to get you guys to start to look at baseball as a special strength. And then when you guys start to understand baseball as a special strength, then you'll be able to have better communication with the actual skill coaches on what it is that you guys are doing with treatment and training. Maybe they can select better drills. Maybe the drills that they're doing are not optimal because they don't understand the neurological and the biological prerequisites of the baseball athlete. Does this make sense? So you can see that you have to look at it through both lenses, right? But when you look at it through the skill lens, what you're going to see is you're going to see coachable findings, right? So you're going to see skill coaches are going to essentially cue something. Hey, do this, do that. Hey, when they're throwing, your release point is off, right? They're going to be saying very specific things in regards to how the athlete is self-organizing themselves, right? So they're going to say, hey, you're organizing your arm too high. I want you to lower it down, right? Hey, you're not driving through the ground when you're going to pitch. Can you go ahead and do that? Those are coachable findings. Those findings do not change the athlete, just so that we're clear. They change how the athlete organizes themselves to give a certain emergent behavior, but they do not change the athlete, right? And furthermore, the athlete may be doing those things because they don't have a neurological or biological capacity that's needed to do it how the coach is trying to coach them. Does this make sense, right? And so you can see that over here, this is looking at it through the skill lens, right? So if we pick a play, like a specific emergent behavior on the baseball diamond, you can look at it and you can go, okay, like he didn't rotate his pelvis enough here, his torso's too fat, all of these things. Those all fall into the category of how they're organizing themselves, right? To know why the athlete's doing that, you have to know, well, what are the neurological and biological capacities of that individual? Maybe they don't have the biological capacity to disassociate the pelvis relative to the femur, and maybe that's why the foot's coming up, right? And if that is the case, you can see that you can't coach their way out of that. You have to change how the athlete is, right? And that's why over here we say that essentially treatment and training is self-determining, right? If you start to, if you start to go, hey, there's not enough joint function of the pelvis relative to the femur, and then you start to do work, whether that's on a treatment table or whether that's in the gym, to get better disassociation of pelvis on femur, you're now changing the athlete. You're giving them more space in a specific area so that they can move through it. Does this make sense? Right? And so a lot of what we see, right, is we'll see where like a coach is continuing to coach the same thing over and over again. Well, what we try to tell people is like, listen, if you're cueing the athlete, hey, I need you to be able to rotate your pelvis. And they go, okay. And then you go, do you understand what I'm asking? I need the pelvis to do this. Yes, I do. And then they can't do it. It's not probably a coachable thing. Like it's probably something that now you're going to have to figure out, how do I program to acquire more joint function, right? And so you can see quite quickly when we start to discuss what we call transfer of training and transfer of treatment, that these two have to be running in conjugation. So let me say one thing, and we'll get to this earlier, but like I'm using the nomenclature, they have to be run in conjugation. That means that they have to be run like concurrently or simultaneously, right? So that like, you know, you as the programmer who's in charge of treatment and training is now talking to the skill coach to be like, hey, listen, you're trying to have them do this specific thing where you're trying to get them to essentially rotate their pelvis, but when I assessed it, they can't do that, right? So now you can see when you guys are thinking about how does this athlete spend their time, they're probably wasting their time if they're trying to coach out something that they don't have, right? And then that puts you guys into the position where then you can do some work with that athlete, you can stimulate more joint function, more reactive strength, you can acquire those specific capacities that are needed, and then you circle back to the coach and you go, hey, that athlete can now do what it is that the swing requires. So now let me know how that coaching works. You guys tracking with me so far? So the main point that we kind of want to go over is that you cannot program coachable findings, right? Right? When you start to find deficits in the biological and neurological side, you have to program them, right? You have to program them in so that you're actually stimulating the development of whatever it is that athlete is missing, okay? And so you can see programming is arranging treatment and training over time to move an athlete from point A to point B. So some of the nomenclature that we use at Absolute is when you onboard an athlete, you have to figure out where they are, right? Like when Paul and I arrived into the Dominican Republic, like we had to let Orlando or Ariel know where we were at. That's our point A. And then our destination is point B. Does this make sense? But before we got to point B, we had to know where point A was. It's the same thing with programming. Like you have to know where the athlete's at, and you have to know where your programming is taking the athlete. And that's why then we call programming the roadmap, right? You guys tracking with me so far? Okay, and so one of the things that we've done is when you start to look at baseball as a special strength, what you'll see is there's neurological prerequisites and biological prerequisites. So when you do a point A, you're seeing, hey, do they have the neurology to do what I'm asking them to do? And do they have the biology to also do what I'm asking them to do? And now you can see that this is not coaching. Like you are now in the treatment and training realm where you are trying to acquire very specific capacities so that then it can transfer over to the baseball diamond.